Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, hi, Mom. My mom's here. Always showing up for me. Welcome, welcome. All right. I think we can get started. So welcome to today's conversation. We're really excited and grateful you're here for this chance to just have a rich dialogue around how these two really inspiring and powerful change frameworks of asset-based community development and the solidarity economy work together, how they complement each other, and what can they really learn from each other, as well as in a really practical way. How might we blend these practices as well as these networks and folks that are out there doing them on the ground? What could we learn from each other? What could we do more together? So next slide, please. And we have some wonderful friends here. We are going to be holding this as a conversation among some of us who are practitioners, and then creating some opportunities towards the second half of the call to break out into groups so you can be in dialogue with each other as well. And just a couple notes about the path to this conversation. Just for me personally, this is kind of like a geeky dream come true. My background is in asset-based community development, but always like had this passion for economy and real system change. And so a few years back, I kind of had this real strong sense that, as an ABCD world, it would be beneficial for us to be in a little more intentional relationship with these other practices who I kept being exposed to, and they seemed very resonant and parallel. But I just noticed like we were really using their language. They seemed to be using ABCD language in some ways, but there just wasn't much dialogue or like overlap between them. So I've just been on this sort of personal journey of stepping out into solidarity economy and then discovering other similar frameworks. And I want to just give a shout out to the Resist and Build network, which I was invited into by Emily Kawano about 3 years ago, which because of that network, it's a very pluralistic network uniting for system change. I was able to come into contact with Mikiala, deeper contact with Amaha, and a number of amazing other people practicing solidarity economy and other frameworks. So just a shout out, in addition to the organization sponsoring this today, to the Resist and Build Network as a space for us to have these kind of cool mycelium network building, cross-pollination conversations and relationships. So Neil, I'll pass it over to you to share a little bit about the flow of today.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, April. Yeah, it's great to have everyone here. We're like 50 people with us, and it's just from all over the place. And just a little bit about defining the experience, like what we want to kind of what kind of experience do we want to have together? A good conversation for one. Generative, lots of voices, new understandings. And I kind of see this conversation as maybe just the beginning of maybe a longer conversation, that this is a start that you can take into your communities, and to explore and to lead. Yeah, I want to just quickly share the agenda. So, right, we're doing some of the framing and context right now. We're going to do the host circle introductions in just a second. And then we'll get into a kind of panel discussion about defining ABCD and the solidarity economy to give us a kind of firm foundation and knowing what those two things are to build a discussion on. And then we'll have more panelist discussion on like comparing and analyzing ABCD and solidarity economy together, the strengths, weaknesses, the possible synergies. And then we'll have breakouts where we'll ask you to explore what's possible if these worlds knew each other better. And then we'll have some closing thoughts. So let's just dive into introductions, because we have an amazing group of people together, panelists, conversants, discussants, how you want to call them. I'll kick off the introductions. I'm Neil Gormflow. I'm the ABCD EYES Network Connector. That's the Asset-Based Community Development Institute. And I'm helping to grow ABCD's new global membership network. This is a kind of global community of practice of people who are ABCD practitioners, researchers, consultants, etc. And we just launched this network earlier this year, and I just want to share a little bit too about the Institute. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit membership organization supporting ABCD practitioners worldwide. And the Institute was founded in 1993 by John McKnight and Jody Kretzmann after their the publication of their influential book, Building Communities from the Inside Out. Definitely recommend, people call it the Green Book in the community. There's a link to it on the site. Yeah, you can find it through Google too. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. Um, and and the Institute has been a hub for practitioners for over 30 years, and now we've kind of like opened our doors to build a bigger community and bring ABCD into the world even further. And so we launched this network, as I said. Oops, clicked on something. Just a little bit about the network. It's a way that practitioners and ABCD folks can connect across the globe on our forums, through gatherings, can get training. There's communities of practice and work groups, and there's all kinds of resources built up over the last 30 years. So and also thought partnerships in events like what we're having now. So please do check out the Institute. I invite you to join the network. There's also training resources classes you can sign up for, and more events. So that's a little bit about what I do at the Institute and the Institute itself and membership. And I will pass it on to Mickey Alla to introduce herself.
Aloha kako, everyone. My name is Miki Ala Catalfano. I am a co-founder and the executive director and co-director of Native Roots Network, and we are also members of the People's Network for Land and Liberation. I'm happy to be here today with you all.
Aaron, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I'm Aaron Fernando. I work with Shareable currently. I had freelanced for Shareable for a number of years, and so I've written about and worked on some editing projects that related to solidarity economy. And then I do local organizing. Recently started some kind of solidarity economy adjacent things locally, including like Food Not Bombs. And in my freelance writing, it's a lot of kind of like movement journalism and solutions journalism. So yeah, I'll send it over to April.
Thank you. So, hey, y'all, April Donor. I'm located in the Council of Three Fires area, also known as Chicago, in Little Village neighborhood, which I adore. I'm a steward and trainer with the ABCD Institute. I've been involved for about 20 years now. So lots of amazing evolution of that community and network and institute that I've been very fortunate to be a part of and witness. Currently also working with the Golden Institute, which uses asset-based community development along with other change frameworks to support and connect and really motivate grassroots leaders in Chicago as well as in other countries around the world. We have the Chicago Peace Fellows program as well as the Golden Global Fellows. And so we have a growing network of folks who are out there on the ground, doing the work but having this support and celebration behind them. Also working with the Next System Project and Next System Constellation, which is an initiative through the Democracy Collaborative as well as other partners that's aimed at action and thinking around how do we address these systemic challenges in the United States that we're facing, especially thinking how do we work, beyond extractive capitalist systems.
Bless of love. My name is Maha Selassie from Dayton, Ohio. I'm currently in Ghana, so I'm hoping the internet connection stays. But um, yeah, like so Co-op Dayton, we're focused on building a community wealth building, and building solidarity economy through building a cooperative ecosystem. So we currently have four co-ops: Gem City Market, which is a food co-op, a maker space, a farm called New Soul, and then Guided by Mushrooms, which is kind of like another farm co-op. And then we combine that with like movement building and like meaning making, popular education, and asset-based community development. So I'm excited for this conversation too, because I just want to like learn and go deeper into the space.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what each of these frameworks are, as well as kind of how giving some examples of how they look on the ground. We know everyone in this call who's joined this call, it sounds like. Also, I'm loving the chat and I'm loving the connection that's happening in the chat. So we're already doing solidarity economy and ABCD in live action. So thank you for doing that. So we're going to dive really quickly. I'm going to go ahead with Amaha and share a bit about ABCD. And then going to pass it over to Mikhail and Aaron to share more on solidarity economy. Both what do they mean, like what are the kind of overall frameworks and concepts, and then what do those look like in practice, giving a couple of examples. So I can kick it off with ABCD. Neil, if you want to go to that first slide.
Or,
Yep,
or this one.
that's good. And then we can,
Okay.
yeah. So asset-based community development. One thing I want to say about it that I always try to share, it's a modern name for something that humans have been using since kind of time immemorial to survive and thrive and solve problems, right? And you can go to the next slide. The name of it came about, the naming of it, through a couple of wonderful men, John McKnight and Jody Kretzmann, both of whom are now ancestors now, who met and started to collaborate in the 1980s. John McKnight had done many years of organizing in Chicago, starting in back of the yards, really working alongside oppressed and disinvested communities to build their own power, to solve problems collectively. And it was when he joined Northwestern University as the head of a giant institute there that covered many different social sciences. He had this realization through sitting down with the academics there that they actually were operating with a very different map of the communities that they were studying and writing about than what he had witnessed, being in these communities and working and fighting alongside community members. So he teamed up with his friend Jody Kretzmann, who also had a strong background in organizing and also journalism. And they spent 4 years on this learning journey. They visited 20 cities. They knocked on 4,000 doors, had at least 2,000 conversations with people. And what they asked was to neighbors, and they sat at the feet of neighbors and asked them, can you tell me a story about someone who's done something here that's made things better? So these are the stories that they collected. And next slide. And they put those stories together in their seminal book called Building Communities from the Inside Out, Path Toward Finding and Mobilizing a Community's Assets. So that's when they first named this framework. And really it was this proposal that, hey, we actually went out and found that here's all of these stories of internally generated and very successful change within neighborhoods. And the commonalities between them were, number one, that people started with what they had, right? They took their own talents and assets and connections and relationships and energy and passion, and they started something. And the second defining feature of all of these stories was that the people themselves were the drivers of change, right? They were the ones that defined an issue or a possibility. They're the ones that drove it. They might pull in external resources, but they were the ones in control. and in charge. So they released this book and basically had way more a positive response, an enthusiastic response than they expected, and that ended up becoming much more of their lives than they had planned when they kind of thought they were just going to release this and then move on to other projects. But that is what then led to the ABCD Institute, the forming of it, and really spreading and then continually evolving around the world. So we really talk about ABCD as a lens of, you can go to the next slide, of moving from, looking at things with a deficiency lens, right? As seeing, just starting with what's there or what's wrong, which is, not stuff that's not real, right? But if we go to the next slide, and we start with what is there, which is the way that community members actually naturally work, when often left to their own devices, and that we historically have. We take what we have and we come up with solutions together. Then actually what ends up ironically happening is you often take care of the needs, those needs and those problems in the process of finding what we have and mobilizing and activating and connecting it. We end up filling those needs, but we start with what we have to take care of what we need, right? And so you can go to the next slide. So there's a few graphics. I won't spend a ton of time just for the sake of time, but if we think of like how does community development often happen, ABCD really distinguishes between community associations and citizens, community members, right? We don't mean citizens in a legal term, but just people who are active in their community. So if you look on the right, you see who is often around the table when we put funding into initiatives. It's often institutions, right? So if we think of these hierarchical, top-down controlled, social service agencies, many nonprofits, municipalities, right, et cetera, et cetera. They are often the ones around the table making key decisions, getting paid to do work and put things into practice. And then we have the community off to the side who maybe gets to have some input, but often not, right? And so ABCD is about moving from that to the second side of that image where we have community around the center, right? And then institutions or professional paid helpers sitting and saying like, okay, how can we be supportive of what the community wants to do, right? So how can we have community-driven development and solutions? The other thing that I'll highlight that I personally really love about ABCD is it's about when you're talking at the community level, we are trying to really restore and revive the natural mutual connections of care between people, right? Both activate folks' sense of agency as problem solvers, and then also, really realize that this is about rebuilding relationships. And also, if we look at natural systems, right, this is also the way that they operate most successfully. Next slide. So this is just quick. It could be a reference. There's so many different ways that ABCD has been incorporated, or that there are parallel practices that use this way of thinking. So this is just like a bit of stuff that I geek out about, and I thought I would share. So different change methodologies that are complementary to ABCD. Next slide. And just super quickly, this was my own experience with ABCD that was really formative for me. I'll share some articles and things in the resources at the bottom because I want to make sure you have time to share as well. But my journey started in Florida with learning about ABCD after many years being obsessed with both community and social change. And through a relationship I was able to form with John McKnight, I was able to receive mentoring to do neighborhood-based work in Sarasota, Florida. I saw there's someone here from Tampa. Whoop, whoop. I then found amazing work going on in Indianapolis. I visited a few times and I just decided to move because they had initiated a process through a church called Broadway Church in Mapleton Fall Creek neighborhood, where it started with the pastor, Mike Mather, who had been exposed to ABCD, very passionate, kind of this, had a savior mentality early on, and then realized, like, what if we move from a sort of savior charity mentality to helping this neighborhood around us to one of investment. And through that, just kind of started with those lenses, which led to hiring a neighborhood connector named Diamond. And then he went out and discovered more community members that were passionate and willing to form circles and get their fellow neighbors together around things like art, around things like child or teen pregnancy, and how do we solve that together, around economy, forming small businesses, supporting each other, one-to-one small scale connection and care, dealing with crises and harm in collective ways that very much mirror restorative justice. But really, they were going with what are the gifts and talents in this neighborhood? How do we name, bless, and connect them? This then led to them transforming their youth program from paying outside people to come in and kind of teach their young people and do activities with them in the neighborhood to just straight up hiring the young people themselves in the neighborhood. And that was called the Roving Youth Corps, which then just led to more and more, uncovering of this abundance and possibility, and really activating the community's own capacity to solve its problems and build towards its dreams. There's so many stories, honestly, to what happened there and that I was able to witness, and many lessons that I took from it. But I think, one of the biggest ones is that ABCD, it's always this practice, but it's really stepping into with this lens of assuming that there's abundance there. If we don't see it, it's more an issue of our own eyes, right? And then, how do we go out with that kind of curiosity and then, kind of follow the thread, right, of what's there, and how do we strengthen it? So I will pass it to Amaha.
Or I think
Good thing there, bro. I really appreciate what you mentioned as far as the assuming the abundance, because it's like knowing that it's already there and it's already in the room and in the community. Do we have that slide of the or
Yeah, which one do you want, Amaha?
just the one with um the community together? Does that make it to the slide
Oh,
or
right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, cool. So I wanted to kind of share briefly like how an example of how that works. So when we were building the Gem City Market, uh Dayton was hyper segregated. So we had 98% of African Americans living on one side, the west side. We had 94% of white living on the east side, and then we had the Turkish, Latino, and African refugee community. And what we found was that through the product of redlining, the river divided opportunity, right? And so we had low and very low opportunity on the west side, higher opportunity on the east side. And so it kind of created this scenario where um, we had 40,000 residents and no full service grocery store. So people were having to take two buses to get to a grocery store, or they had to go to a corner store and pay exorbitant prices just to get their basic needs met, right? And so oftentimes in areas that's been underdeveloped, um, there's this sense of being recipients, meaning that like the community just flows off of the wind that comes from downtown instead of like building our own wind, right? And so when we started saying that like, yo, like we deserve a grocery store just like everybody else deserves a grocery store, and we started the process, it was really this thing of like how we turn recipients into co-creators, and it was through acknowledging the gifts that were amongst us and acknowledging that, the gifts, the talents, the resources, the vision that was amongst us, which is to me part of this asset-based community development, right? And this picture on the bottom is one of my favorite pictures because this was a groundbreaking, right? And oftentimes at a groundbreaking, we have the mayor, a couple elected officials that got on their hard hats and their shovels, and everybody's just walking, looking around and clapping, right? But if you notice in this picture, everybody has a shovel, right? We were the Oprah Winfrey, shovel for you and a shovel for you, right? Because we know that like without the community working together, we wouldn't have got to this point. You know what I mean? And so we wanted everybody to have a shovel to capture that, like we did this together. You know what I mean? And so to me, like not only that example of community power, it's an example of asset-based community development because it took the gifts and talents of the people in this picture for us to get to a point of opening up a grocery store, because at first people said we couldn't do it. You know what I mean? We had zero experience, you know what I mean? So it's not like it's an unfounded thing, you know what I mean? But we knew that we were no longer going to accept the unacceptable. And so we leveraged our gifts and talents and resources to practice the self-determination to build what we needed in our community. So I'll pass it on.
Thank you so much, Amaha. And if y'all get a chance to visit Gem City Market, it's just it's a place you walk into and you just, yeah, it just feels different. You know, it feels like community. It's a very different kind of store. I got a chance to visit a couple years ago, and Amaha's a great host, and he'll go and show you a lot of other cool stuff in the city. Sorry, Amaha, I shouldn't shouldn't offer you up like that.
Good, thanks.
So now we're going to hear about solidarity economy as a framework and a practice with Aaron and Michaela.
Yeah. So can I have the next slide? Great. So yeah, my name's Aaron Fernando. And the thing that kind of brought me to the solidarity economy initially, I guess I didn't realize it was kind of like an ABCD frame, which was community currencies. And so that was the thing that I had kind of like read about and heard about in a podcast when I was working in kind of like a DC nonprofit, and that had left me feeling pretty icky about the very like top-down hierarchical power dynamic of like there were kind of like these kind of givers and then the kind of people that needed the resources, and then the givers kind of decided how to do the giving and how to like who was worthy, and it just did not sit right. And so what was so appealing about community currencies was it was the first time I kind of came up with I heard the phrase like link unmet needs with unused resources, and like it almost seemed like a, an interesting like matching problem. And for a number of reasons over the years I like worked with some community currencies. I don't believe that those are necessarily like that great a way to approach this type of problem, but what it did give me was this lens of how do we link um unmet needs in a community with the unused resources of communities. And if you spend time just in communities, you can often find you will definitely find that there are things like skills that people have that they're not able to like put to use in their jobs that often kind of see them as like a cog in the machine. And there are like these vast like kind of interconnections and all this like social capital that is not really put into it's not really valued by the dominant system of economics that we live in. And so for me it was really just like that like matching problem and that like power kind of reframe that was really appealing to me. And then after I stopped doing things with community currencies, I expanded to looking at the solidarity economy in general. And so why don't we define that? Can I have the next slide? So there's a number of definitions of the solidarity economy, or I often hear it as the new economy. Um, and so a couple that I selected here are ones that I feel are useful to turn over in your head and to like kind of remember as we go through this call. And so what we have is one from the New Economy Coalition. A solidarity economy is an environment where all of the things a community needs are controlled and governed by everyday people. And then, as we're thinking about these, like think about where does like real power come from? And so then from the US Solidarity Economy Network defines solidarity economy as economic alternatives grounded in principles of social solidarity, cooperation, egalitarianism, sustainability, and economic democracy. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide. This is a definitely non-exhaustive list of things that are considered solidarity economy. So mutual aid, again, like someone said in the chat, charity versus mutual aid. So if you've engaged in mutual aid and you've engaged in charity, you probably, I hope, feel better when you're engaging with mutual aid, because there's less of that problematic power dynamic. It's less about like the havers and the have-nots. It's more about like where can we find these matches where everyone can help each other. And so that's like one kind of like, I guess, class of solidarity economy project, or set of projects. Then there's community supported agriculture. I put that in there as like number 2 because I feel like it's a really interesting way of thinking about community finance. If you are engaging in agriculture and you need financial capital, um, you can go to like a bank and get a loan, and then there's a power dynamic. Or if you actually think about how community supported agriculture works, it's basically crowdfunding from the community to pre-finance a season of production. And that benefits both the farmer or grower as well as the community, because the community is investing in their own local food system, which builds resilience, which builds kind of those community connections. It improves the ecology, and the farmer then can have less of a be at less of a it's not a problematic power dynamic to be kind of indebted, not financially, but in terms of whatever you're growing, vegetables for a single season, because that's kind of what you probably enjoy doing. And then going down the line, there's things like, okay, so locally owned utilities and communications infrastructure. So my work with Shareable currently is with rural electric cooperatives, which are, there's a lot of room to improve, but they are supposed to be, and sometimes can very well be, democratically controlled uh, utilities that are non-extractive, right? Because if it's a private utility, you have uh, some entity that's kind of like skimming from the top for profits. Whereas if it's municipal or a co-op, you don't necessarily have that. Um, then there's things like local procurement for policies for municipal schools and hospitals. That's again to like re-engage and keep engaged the local economy to really keep the wealth flowing in a locality. Then there's, community land trust and land back efforts, ways of being on land and in community that are not as extractive or non-extractive or less colonial. Again, it's a correction of power dynamics there. Then there's like artist maker and media co-ops or co-ops in general, where as differentiated from a hierarchical workplace that is unionized, it's actually just more democratic in its structure itself. Then I just, for sake of time, I won't run through all of these, but you can see that there's different categories of uh things. So there's like finance, there's like work, there's like energy. And a couple books which are in the resources section way at the bottom of the slide deck are Shareables, Sharing Cities, Shameless Self-Promotion, and then more shameless self-promotion, Beautiful Solutions. Both of these have like a number of solidarity economies across a number of domains. And so there isn't just like one or two projects, there's a whole lot. You can also check out, they're like Nonprofit Quarterly, Yes Magazine, which is unfortunately folding soon, and then Shareable. There's a lot of solidarity economy examples that are present in the world. Yeah, and then I'll hand it off to Mikiala to talk about some more specifics.
Awesome. I'm going to share our specific application to solidarity economy, and I would say also ABCD, although we were saying earlier, I didn't realize I was dating ABCD all along, just didn't have the language for it. But this is how we do it in our community. And whoever's working those slides, could you go to the next slide and get your finger ready? Because I'm going to try to whip through my section, but I really feel like some of the images and the story of how we got here are helpful for folks to hear. So Native Roots Network is a grassroots community-based nonprofit organization located in Wintuyana and Pitt River territories. Our mission is to advance Indigenous-led pathways for just and vibrant communities. And our work emerges like a sapling from the roots of elders and ancestors that fought hard to pave the way and create a space so we could be here today talking to you. So in that way, NRN doesn't begin, it grows out of the trunk of a tree that has been growing for a long time. Next slide. Through our work, we have honed in on our values, and these are the guiding forces in our efforts. I want to highlight our core value. The earth is our mother. Without the earth, none of the rest matters. And we see ourselves and our work as kipuka. When the lava flows over the land, sections and islands remain, and the spores from these remaining plants seed the impacted lands to grow and restore new with a K system. Next slide. To tell the origins of NRN is to tell a story of building on the good things already taking place here, learning from others in our communities, and then applying and multiplying our impact at home. Our work is roughly broken into 6 overlapping components. Native youth leadership development has been a constant part of our vision. Early in our development, we facilitated the Native youth cultural exchange. We got the opportunity to travel to, learn from, and share with our relatives from Hopi, Hawaii, and here at home in our Pitt River and Wintu country. Most recently, we initiated our Indigenous Community Changemaker Apprenticeship Program, and Juventino Legacy is that apprentice. The second, next slide. The second component of our work has been arts and culture. We initiated the Native Arts Cultural Collective, Our Story Native Art exhibitions, where we rented out spaces to hold month-long arts and cultural events, presentations, and trainings, where our people could tell their own story through the visual arts. Next slide. An extension of the cultural exchange has been our organizing and supporting ceremonial runs and run delegations for runs such as Bears Ears, Ahapule Ainaholo in Hawaii, the Tusky Run in Japan, and the annual participation in the Pitt River Ancestral Run. Next slide. The fourth component of our work is our advocacy, civic engagement, and placekeeping. We help folks know when, where, and what is going on downtown. We also understand the overlap with the arts in placekeeping and advocacy, and recently completed a mural in downtown Reading on the historic Cascade Theater to reverse the erasure of Wintu people in this community and their homelands. Next slide. We facilitate political education through gatherings, workshops, film screenings, and hosting our intercultural working group we call CoLab Shasta to come together, learn the history that led to our current moment, and work to figure out the best paths forward. Next slide. In 2017, we began our exploration, education, and development of culturally centered economic projects. We knew that we needed to find ways to meet the material needs of our folks, and we've been learning and designing ways we can do this without being at odds with the very culture we are seeking to restore and practice. This exploration has taken us to Detroit, to Hawaii, Virginia, New York, Mississippi, Atlanta, and other places where communities are experimenting and finding ways to care for people and for Mother Earth. Next slide. We remain true to our Indigenous roots, but we also believe in the importance of building solutions collaboratively. Out of our political education workshops, we built relationships with aligned community and often work interculturally. CoLab is a thought and collaborative laboratory. Together, we'll build building the solutions we deserve, putting people and the planet above profit. Next slide. We've pulled folks together and found our movement community carefully. To be frank, we did not want to be stuck in debates of moderation. We need action. We understand the threat that we have been experiencing, over 400 years of impact to report on, as well as the most recent level of threat, even more acute with the precarity that we now all face. Under the current administration, we know that climate, racial justice, economic justice, gender justice, environmental justice is under threat, and we experience more organized abandonment every day. We are building futures we need to survive and thrive now. Next slide. The history of community here is one of boom and bust. Plantation economics, extraction, exploitation, and expropriation. This has created a set of challenges that we face in our daily lives. We experience these challenges on the ground, and the data reflects this. This on top of a history of genocide, forced removal, persecution, and disenfranchisement. Next slide. We are in a designated rural area, but we pretty much like that. Next slide. According to FEMA, we have a high vulnerability to natural hazards. Next slide. Well, we have a low community resilience. Next slide. We live and work in an area that is presented with many socioeconomic challenges and ranks in the lowest quartile, or as said in the positive, like they do here, we have healthier economic conditions than 14% of other California tracts. Next slide. We live in a region of wildfire, and with the change in climate, this is expected to get much worse. Next slide. As with extreme heat. Next slide. In between the time since we secured the title and today, we are experiencing the development of new, and I mean title to land, and I'll get to that. In between the time we've secured those titles, today we are experiencing the development of new barriers to our goals. This includes things like the HR 9495 nonprofit killer bill now finding its way through other legislation, and this is the disruption this has caused in the ecosystem. The doubling down of the authoritarian state with even greater clarity, and I could go on. Next slide. Our explorations and historical and current challenges helped fuel our economics development framework. We conducted a community needs assessment, but we've organized here for 20 plus years, so the data confirmed what we already knew. People want a safe place, an explicitly native space. The elders wanted a place for youth to learn their culture, for people to learn and practice their languages. People wanted to learn to weave, to process traditional plants, and to prepare traditional foods. Our focus is on creating these spaces where community can gather to celebrate, to learn, to rest, to heal, and restore. We also want this to be a place of planning, action, and practice, and when disaster strikes, a place of refuge for our Native and solidarity economy communities. Next slide. What is economics? This is our history, this is our landscape, and our community. We know that in order to address our community needs, we needed to develop our own plan. From our elders, from our cultures, from our experiences, and from our core values emerged our development framework we call economics, restoring our symbiotic reciprocal relationship with the earth and each other. It is a literal and metaphorical model. For example, we are in the process of developing TEK, Traditional Ecological Knowledge, land restoration crews, who will take care of our oak woodlands, which in turn will help them be healthier oaks. Healthier oaks produce healthier acorns. When we gather and we integrate acorn into our diets, we become healthier too, and then are in better shape to help the trees. We seek to develop other opportunities like this to help us restore the abundance of our landscapes and build the capacity and resilience of our community. Next slide. Components of economics. Our long-term vision is an integrated web of projects and programs that support and source one another, all the while maintaining our focus to stay with the earth. Next slide. In 2024, we secured 2 land parcels, giving us places to actuate our economics framework. Next slide. We rematriated 4.5 acres in the small unincorporated town of Bella Vista. Next slide. This was our initial vision, a place to launch our economics framework, an Indigenous-led community resilience center and intercultural solidarity economy hub. This place would also serve as a community center, a gathering place with features such as a coffee shop, native plant and healthy food gardens during blue skies, and it could also serve as a community resilience center in times of emergency. Next slide. Through trust-based relationship as a node of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, we then secured Winnum-Tost, our land lab, a place for cultural practice, TEK land restoration projects, an arts and culture lab and community production center. Next slide. The developed infrastructure here is concentrated on a 10-acre section of land. Next slide. And would feature our TEK land team and land restoration projects, a community production center, an ample space for critical meeting and learning space, as well as arts and culture workshops. There's also space for food and medicine gardens, traditional food and fiber processing, and a large indoor and outdoor space for convenings and community gatherings. So keep this in mind. Here's my shameless plug. If you folks in the movement are looking for places to be hosted. Next slide. Projected impacts for 2025 include regenerative community development, workforce development, cooperative business development, community building workshops and programs, and providing housing. And those things are in action now. Next slide. Projected climate resilience impacts for 2025 include living in right relationship with the land, and we have already seen how this is beginning to occur with the with wildlife. Reintroduce traditional practices such as cultural burns, remove or control invasive plants, restore soil health. And in our work, we know that what we also need is healing. All this work has tangible outcomes, but an important and imperative outcome is human wellness. During times of emergency, to be a community emergency service site, we will act as a potential evacuation site for people and for animals, and to provide connectivity, power, food and water, access, and more. Next slide. There are many expressions of the solidarity economy and various names for it. For us, this journey began out of our community needs, and it led to our exploration and learning about what was possible with our history in our particular locale and circumstances. Leading with our indigenous and collective values, we arrived at our theory and practice, economics, our new, with a K, ecosystem for life. Our community has already shown that the skills, assets, and talents needed to create positive and sustainable change exist right here. We are now in the process of applying this into action with all the challenges, joys, and wins and setbacks that come with creating a new pathway. While the terminology of ABCD principles are new, the foundation of these ideas have always been a part of how we apply solidarity economy practice. Thank you. I'll pass it to.
Yeah, thank you, Mikiala, and to Amaha and April and Aaron for setting a kind of foundation in definition of ABCD and also solidarity economy, and really appreciated that in-depth example of solidarity economy, and even coming up with your own term, acorn economics. I love that. And so the next session, this is what we're going to do now with the panel. We're going to talk about the strengths, weaknesses, and overlaps of each ABCD and solidarity economy, and also, like what are the assets we could use to understand this intersection better, and kind of open up our imagination a little bit. And so we're going to do a quick round, 1 minute each per panelist. Give us your top ideas, and let's see. I'll start with Amaha.
All right. Like I'm sitting here, I'm loving this dialogue, and I'm looking at like what are some of the commonalities, and both are relational and not transactional, and for me, like it's all the same language, you know what I mean? Like kind of like the roads of the roads by different names I got put in the chat earlier, you know what I mean? Because you can't get to solidarity economy without asset-based community development, and asset-based community development is solidarity economy, for me. But I'm looking at the active participant democracy and community governance, right? How everybody has a voice and a gift that they can put to the center of the circle as we develop a vision that is so inspiring that, like, oh, say less, I'm in. You know what I mean? The power of circle. That like how we're like getting outside of the triangle structure into a circular structure that acknowledges our common humanity, which then leads us down to Ubuntu. You know what I mean? That notion of like the interconnectedness amongst all. When we're looking at some of the foundational ideas that kind of emerge in the spaces, and the notion of creating our own story, that like we're the protagonist, right? And that like we're building the future, and we're building the history of humanity and all things, you know what I mean? Instead of just being recipients of anybody else's win. And so like both to me are ways and methods to cultivate our own social win, to drive us towards our direction of how we bring, like Dr. Jessica will say, community transformation and economic development need to go hand in hand. And so to me, ABCD, which builds like the solidarity of the solidarity economy, and then like how we build the economy off of the solidarity that we're cultivating amongst ourselves.
Nice,
I might have been over a
Amaha.
minute, I apologize.
That was great. Yes, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like newer to the framing or to the framework of asset-based community development, and in learning about it, it feels to me like it's kind of like seeing the same object from like two angles. Because what I was focusing on with solidarity economy projects was really power, and then in looking at how ABCD works, it seems to be like mechanisms that are empowering because you're looking at what can the community actually like do for itself or offer to itself. And so yeah, it's a different, I think they're both ways of trying to arrive at the same thing. You can't, I don't think like if you're trying to create a solidarity economy project and have it be sustainable and successful in the long term, and you have um a power dynamic either in terms of where the funding is coming from or where the controls are, that isn't grounded in ABCD, it will probably face significant challenges. And so I feel like they are like inextricably connected, so much so that they're sort of like two ways of approaching the same thing, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. April.
Yeah, so you can go to the next slide, Neil. So yeah, this is I've been geeking out about this for a long time. So I'm going to try to make my comment really short. And I appreciate so much and resonate with what Maha and Aaron, what you shared. So you can go next slide. So, well, I'll start real quick. I've been in the ABCD world for a long time, and then it was through a gathering in Richmond, Virginia, 2 years ago, where I met one of the staff of the Democracy Collaborative, Neil McEnroy, and at like this little kind of tea gathering we had organized just to get to know each other. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about ABCD, but the problem with ABCD is that it has a horizontal analysis of power and building power." But it doesn't look at the vertical, right? And economy is a huge driver of vertical power. Then if we look at capitalism, right, and how that really creates and recreates these conditions of extraction and oppression and one directional power, power over both over the earth and over our fellow humans in this kind of ongoing cycle, then you're really missing part of the picture. So I think that's like my one sustaining thought about why these two frameworks are very similar and complementary. Ooh, I see someone's making some art on the slides here. um, but they kind of need each other, in my opinion. Next slide, real quick. And Jody Kretzmann always used to say, like, ABCD is necessary but incomplete, so there's like awareness that it isn't the whole thing. And I think that some of the strengths that ABCD offer, and I know we'll talk about this more, but is that really nuanced person to person relationship building, right? Focusing on the gifts. And what I've seen is often, even when we do things, used in solidarity economy like mutual aid, it's very easy to slip into the one directional kind of giving mentality. I think Amaha or Aaron, you mentioned this, right? Where kind of we're helping others, but it just goes one way, and we don't really take the time to be in relationship with them or to learn what they have to offer. And so it ends up actually being quite a disempowering result, right? That doesn't have that incredible energy of when we recognize that everyone has something to offer and we can build on that. And then at the same time, I think the thing that Solidarity Economy really strongly offers to ABCD is zooming out and seeing that we will continue being in states of extraction and oppression and really deficiency, right? If we don't look at our economic system that creates otherness and allows us to keep being just transactional with one another.
Thank you, April. Mikiala.
Geez, what more could I say? And I talked so much. I agree. I agree with so much of what was shared already by Amaha, Aaron, April, and you as well. I think in my bones, if you're doing solidarity economy or whatever terminology you would use for those activities, if you're not using ABCD and looking specifically at particular areas and not, just talking about it with residents and their assets and talents, I think you should really consider doing that. And that's really all I would say. You should be doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Miguel. And I'll just share a quick reflection. This is something that Amaha and I talked about in a prep call, that, sometimes capitalist assumptions and values, can sneak and kind of unconsciously into solidarity economy projects. For instance, capitalism, you could kind of see it in consumerism as kind of deficit based at the personal level, that through advertising, it's you can see yourself as someone needing a product to fix yourself, to make yourself whole, right? And what ABCD can be kind of is a sort of like a vaccine against this, and this is, kind of what I think the other panelists were speaking to, as ABCD can kind of be this sort of foundation to build on, or a methodology to help shape a solidarity economy project that can, has legs, that can last and build and grow. So wonderful comments, really quick round. This brings us to our breakout sessions that April is going to lead us through.
Yeah, so we wanted to invite you to explore the same question. And I see folks have been chiming in with wonderful thoughts and insights and comparisons in the chat. So I wish I could honestly sit down with each of you or all be together for a meal and talk about this. So, but we want you to have a chance to talk with each other. So we want to ask you to consider these same questions, which is, what are the similarities and differences of these two frameworks? How might they complement each other? What are some assets that we could use even to understand these intersections better? And we'll put those in the chat. And we're going to break you out into triads. I'm not sure if Peter Block is still on the call, but I want to shout out to Peter Block for introducing me to the power of triads, of groups of three. We will
shout out Peter Block.
What's that?
No, I was gonna say shout out to Peter Block if he's still on the call, because he was the one that got me into all this as well. So yeah.
Yes. Mentors. So we're going to break out into groups of three. Neil, with the timing, how long should we do these for? Stick with 9 minutes?
Yeah, perfect.
Welcome back. Hey, Tamara.
I don't know about y'all, but we had a deep conversation in our group. Now, just saying.
That's so
Oh, that's awesome. Doesn't surprise me though.
So we wanted to we don't have a chance to hear from everyone because of the time, but wanted to hear just like 2 or 3 folks. What were some things that struck you from your small group conversation? What struck you? You can go ahead and unmute yourself and share, like actually, yeah. Thomas.
Time, and I joined this meeting late. That I'm in Hawaii, so this started at 6 a.m. and I don't normally start at 6 a.m. myself. So, but we had a pleasant conversation. But my point is this: I've been interested in this kind of work for a long time, and I wanted to ask to what extent this group. I was happy to see ABCD hosting an event like this in conjunction with the solidarity economics folks. Those are 2 of, I would say, 5 groups that I personally am most familiar with and draw the most from. And I wanted to know to what extent. I heard one of you speakers mention the Democracy Collaborative and their community wealth building program, so that's good to know. And there's another couple groups I'd like to know how aware this group is, especially the organizers of this group, if they're aware of a group called Local Futures. Helena Norberg Hodge is kind of the longtime founder of that. And the other one is the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, originally based in the Twin Cities, I think, but they also have a presence in Washington, D.C. I find all of these groups have a lot of synergies and common interest and goals. So I just wanted to throw that out there and ask what the organizers of this group, if they're aware of those other groups, and going forward, do you see opportunities maybe to do similar events to this one with those other groups, maybe all at once or maybe one-on-one? I'm not sure, but that's the thought that came to mind. Thank you.
Yeah,
I love that. Thomas, can you put those in the chat to make sure we capture those? Are you familiar with them, April?
I'll put the names of the groups I mentioned. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
we
Put
might
the
reach out to you
slide
to see if
down.
you want to help us organize that, Thomas.
Okay. Okay.
We
Um,
Be careful what I asked
governance
for,
for
right?
the slide.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But I think that's the whole goal, right? Is that like, how are people that are having like similar dialogues in like their own formations? How are we like softening the center so that like we're creating this nexus where we're all kind of flowing together, right? Because we're building this new world, you know what I mean? So I love that idea.
Yeah, think of the Zapatista quote about a world where many worlds are possible. We're building that. We have time
There's
for one
actually
more.
to answer that also, a lot of those folks, those two are members of New Economy Coalition, and so if you haven't, NEC, New Economy Coalition, has like a listserv and an email list, and it kind of pulls in a lot of what the Solidarity folks are doing.
Thanks for that reminder. I think the New Economy Coalition, I haven't looked for a long time, but it had way more groups than that, right? Maybe 100 or more, I think, if I recall correctly. So,
I think
but
over.
anyway, I'm looking for the names and links in one of my emails that I can copy and paste into your chat. So, bear with me.
We have a request
had
here to, yeah, you saw this. Okay. I'm going to stop
Thank
the
you.
slides. Ah,
Yes.
I
I
to see each other.
So we wish, of course, we had more time. That's always, to unpack this more. But as was suggested, right, this could be an ongoing conversation. We don't just have today. And we wanted to ask if folks could share, just the highlight from your conversation that has really stayed with you in the chat as our collective closing. Especially, any possibilities that you see. What's a possibility you see from the further commingling of these practices, of these ideas, of these networks, of these frameworks, including anything you'd like to offer to support that commingling. And I want to turn it over to Neil to close us out.
Yeah, April, thank you. And just a lot of gratitude for our panelists, everyone that showed up. I mean, we had like at the top, like 64 people with us. That's amazing. And just very promising for this kind of intersection. The depth and richness of the conversation, examples and definitions, and just very inspiring, uplifting. We'll be sharing the recording. We'll be sharing the chat. We'll be sharing the slides with everyone who came. Also, be sure to check out the ABCD Institute. Go to abcdinstitute.org and check out our membership opportunities, more events. Also our resources, and you can get trained as, get ABCD training. I did this year the 18-hour ABCD training. It's over 6 sessions. Highly recommended. And if you want to go deeper, yeah, that's it. That's it for now. Hope to see you on a a future event or in the community at abcdinstitute.org. Thank you very much.
Neil, can I add a quick invitation as well?
Yes, please.
Along the lines of this cross-pollination, just a big shout out to the Resist and Build process and network, which is a place many of us have gotten to know each other, where we can have more of these conversations. We have an awesome listserv, we have online gatherings, and I've just learned so much from being a part of that space and made so many great friends. So yes, hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for coming, and let's stay in touch.
If I could
Yep,
add what, I know we're closing. I think one underlying thing is it's the network weaving, right? And like how we weave that first layer of just humans being humans amongst each other, and then like from there it goes to intentional networks, right? Which is where like the asset-based development comes in. Like, okay, so now that we see ourselves as having a shared identity, what are the gifts and talents that we have amongst each other, and how do we build cooperation and all of these things? You know what I mean? And so it's like how we're building, like, you know, like we're building new systems, you know what I mean? We start with the relationships, right? Because it's like, what are the ideas that we're building structure off of? Because structure is an idea that we add resources to, you know what I mean? And so like all these dialogues are helping us build new systems and structures by building our relationships deeper amongst each other.
So I think we're now into the 15-minute hangout. Geek out session. If so, folks are welcome to stay. I also wanted to just thank and point to the resource page, the slides that we have at the end, and that we do have one of the authors of some of those resources here with us, Peter Block. Thank you so much for being here, but who has been contributing for a long time and stepping into this space between an asset-based approach and economy.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.